Welcome to A-State Sports Take. I'm your host, Gavin Grubbs. Here we're going to get it started off with some talk about Arkansas State's football team this season. We did finish 2-10. What are your guys' thoughts on it? We're going to start out with Will.
I think definitely it was a disappointing season. A team that was picked to finish second or third in the West, and you finish fifth, going 2-10. Only one win in conference, and that was against ULM. Definitely not the greatest performance this year, especially with Butch Jones' first year as a head coach.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was definitely disappointing. I don't think anyone here is too excited about going 2-10. But I'll say I'm cautiously optimistic for the next 5 years of Butch Jones' tenure here, because when you look at we did go 2-10, right? But on the upside, 5 of those games were within one possession. So were we really that bad, or were we just kind of unlucky? I don't know. But I think if we change some things on the last drive of those 5 games, then all of a sudden we're 7-5. So cautiously optimistic about the future of the Red Wolves football team.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not totally out on Butch Jones yet. I think we still got to give him a chance. Everybody expects an immediate fix, especially here in Arkansas. People expect you to just immediately be good, but that's not how it happens most of the time. These things take time. You got to get your recruits in. You got to build the team you want to build, and then once the pieces fall, you could be good, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I definitely think with Butch Jones coming in, everyone thought that we were going to miraculously be the best in the Sun Belt and just be the very, very best that we could. But like you say, we can't just base Butch Jones and the way he coaches on this season. Like, it was his first season here. You can't turn around a football team in one season.
Yeah, and I think we also definitely saw some improvements throughout the season. Our defense was definitely not what you wanted it to be. We gave up around 39 points a game, and we only averaged 25 on offense, so that's not the recipe to win games. But like you said, in the last couple of games of the season, I think we really saw the defense start to step it up and make some better plays. So we did see some improvements, but at the end of the day, only winning 2 games when you only play. You did play Washington, but you only beat one FCS team, only one FBS team. It just really comes down to how much the players want it. And I think watching the team this year, it really just didn't even look like they wanted it that much. Quarterback controversy too, especially playing 2 quarterbacks early on in the season. Second year we've done this, and I think that's not really what you need to do. You need to stick with one quarterback and then see how it goes with the season.
Yeah, I think the issue was there was never any consistency out of either quarterback. Like, one game, Lane Hatcher would play good, and then the other game, Blackman would play good. But neither of them were consistently good throughout every game. So he was kind of forced to see which quarterback was going to want to play better that day. But I agree that you can't win with 2 quarterbacks, but that's kind of how he was stuck, I feel like.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what the defense looks like next season, who our quarterback is next season. There are a lot of controversies around there, and I think Butch Jones is still working on trying to figure out how to mesh everything together to build something good. And I think it's also important to realize that the players are coming over from Blake Anderson's system, which is super different from Butch Jones's system. Blake Anderson is really liberal with his play. He's really fun. He goes for it on 4th down a lot. He runs a lot of trick plays, and Butch Jones is a lot more traditional in his style. So I think maybe that frustrates some players and creates some tension there. But I think once everybody gets on the same page, it'll definitely be an improvement for the Red Wolves.
Yeah, definitely going back to the quarterback situation. Towards the end of the season, we saw Lane Hatcher perform probably the worst he ever has, to say it nicely. But I definitely think that comes with everybody not being comfortable with him not being comfortable at being out there, and then with Blackman going back and forth, which we didn't see him towards the end of the season, just really the beginning. It's just hard to be comfortable with a team that you don't always play with every weekend.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think it's surprising too with Lane Hatcher, because it's almost as he had a year to kind of develop with Logan Bonner. Logan Bonner left. Lane Hatcher now sitting, he realizes he's probably going to be the top dog. Well, then we get James Blackman coming in. I think definitely the competitive edge is what helped him play well at the beginning of the year. But then when Blackman was out, Lane Hatcher had his starting position, and unfortunately he didn't perform as well. So maybe he does need that competitive edge to keep him going. If he's not competing for a spot, maybe he won't play as well.
Yeah.
I think losing Jonathan Adams was a big key to this bad season too, because Jonathan Adams carried us in different games last year. Against Kansas State, he went off. He had like 3 touchdowns against Kansas State, which was our biggest win in who knows how many years. But I think losing him was huge, and losing Logan Bonner was huge as well, because between Logan Bonner and Lane Hatcher, I think Bonner's the better quarterback personally, but I think losing those 2 key pieces along with Blake Anderson was huge in making us have a bad season.
All right, guys, we're going to cut you off. Thank you for watching our very first segment of A-State Sports Take.
How prepared is your family if a tornado shows up at your doorstep, or a flood, or a hurricane? You can't just turn away a natural disaster. That's why it's important to go to ready.gov/plan now. It has the tools and tips you need to make an emergency plan with your family. So if disaster comes knocking,
Let's go.
you'll be ready to help keep your family safe.
It's just a pizza.
Make a plan today.
We are back with A-State Sports Take. This segment, we're going to be talking about the college football playoff. Here in about a week, they're going to announce the field for the college football playoff after the conference championship games this upcoming Saturday. Who do you think the 4 teams making the college football playoff field are? We're going to start with Corey.
I love it. Number 1, Georgia, undefeated. I seriously think they're going to beat Alabama in the SEC championship. Number 2, Michigan. Previously number 6, but they freaking smoked Ohio State, so I think they deserve to be number 2. Number 3, Cincinnati. I'd love to see a group of 5 team get in there, show out for, that group of 5 mentality, even though they are going to Power 5. And I think they'll beat Houston in the AAC championship, so that'll continue their winning streak because they're currently undefeated. Number 4, I'd like to see Oklahoma State. I think they're going to beat Baylor in the Big 12 championship, and I just have to see the mullet, the flow in the top 4.
Yeah, I think your top 4 is really good. First of all, I'd say Georgia has looked amazing all year. Their defense has been really good. But one thing I'd like to point out is don't count out Alabama. You've got a Nick Saban-led team. Yes, they almost lost to a down year Auburn team, and yes, their offensive line has had some struggles, but when you have Nick Saban as your coach and you have the amount of talent that Alabama does, I don't think they're ever out of a SEC championship. However, I do think Georgia will get it done. And then, like you said, Michigan dominated Ohio State. I agree with that. Cincinnati's one that I kind of look at and have they proved themselves this year? Yes, they beat Notre Dame. That was a very quality win. However, they also only beat Indiana by 2 scores, and it required a 15-point comeback in the fourth quarter. And Indiana only went 2-10 this year. So I think Cincinnati will make it, but I think it will be interesting to see how they play in the college football playoff. And then Oklahoma State just absolutely manhandled Caleb Williams. Their defense was on fire and very defensive, tenacious game, and I think Oklahoma State's definitely going to be able to use that defense and beat Baylor, but it's also going to be a really great matchup for the Big Ten title as well.
All right, Will, I got a question for you. Is Cincinnati's win against Indiana any less important than Alabama's near wins against Auburn and LSU?
I think Indiana is definitely an easier opponent than Auburn and LSU. Playing the SEC gauntlet of a schedule, every team's going to be fired up to play Alabama. Nick Saban, everyone wants to beat him. And I think with Alabama, every team's going to get their best. And with Cincinnati, Indiana was supposed to be a really great team this year, but they just didn't have the team and they didn't have the effort. And I think it does look worse on Cincinnati, but it was also earlier in the year, so I can see how people would say that Indiana was better earlier in the year than later.
I really don't even think that Indiana compares to like an SEC level program. And like you said, even Nick Saban said in a press conference, every team prepares the most for our games. Every team thinks this is their rivalry match, especially with Auburn and LSU. They're big rivalries. So I think that Indiana doesn't even compare.
I mean, we can also mention that they lost to an 8-4 A&M team, too, and they struggled versus LSU this weekend when they lost a crazy finish with just 20 seconds left in the game. So I think you could definitely mention that they've had some really bad wins versus not very great. It's like guess you say SEC opponents.
Functionally, I know the top four is probably going to stay close to what it is right now. So, your Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Cincinnati. But honestly, I know it's not going to happen, but I would love to see Baylor or Ole Miss come up and get into the top four. I know that's physically not possible, but I'm always one for a comeback story.
Yeah. I think Oklahoma State has a really good shot because I imagine they'll beat Baylor, who's been a really solid team this season, especially coming off a high win over Oklahoma. But they have 4 wins over top 25 teams, and the only other 2 teams to do that has been Georgia and Alabama. So I think they deserve a spot in the 4.
Or do you guys see any way possible that Notre Dame, they don't have any games left to play, but do you see any way that they move into one of those top 4 spots with losses from top 4 teams?
I don't think so, since they lost to Cincinnati, and I think Cincinnati's probably going to win this weekend versus Houston. So I think that could give them a quality top 25 win. So then you're looking at Cincinnati, probably Oklahoma State, if you have Alabama losing to Georgia, which I expect. So you're probably looking what's my top 4 is Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State, the same as Corey. So I think that's what you're probably going to look at after this weekend.
I think at that rate, Michigan would probably have about the same chance of moving up because I think they're tied for the same amount of losses with Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think only way Notre Dame makes it is Alabama's going to have to lose to Georgia, which, a lot of people have already counted out Alabama, and this is the first time I've really seen Alabama as an underdog. So maybe they can rise to the occasion and beat Georgia. If Alabama wins, I don't see any way Notre Dame makes it. But if they do, if Alabama does lose and Cincinnati loses, I then see Notre Dame propelling themselves into the playoffs, which I think would also be a mistake, however, because in the past, Notre Dame is just not able to compete with these playoff teams, and I think if Notre Dame does make it, it's going to be another blowout loss for them.
I just really don't see it happening because I think Michigan will easily beat Iowa. I think Cincinnati is going to easily beat Houston. I think the Cowboys at Oklahoma State have a really good chance of beating Baylor. So I think they're going to kind of secure their place and where they belong.
Baylor's still without their starting quarterback for the last few games of the year.
Come on, Gary Bonham. I thought he was playing, so. Okay.
All right, that concludes the second segment. We are out of time. This is A-State Sports Take.
We're all just trying to keep things running for those who rely on us. That's why we don't have time to be sick with the flu.
We don't have time for delays.
We don't have time for spills.
Next.
We don't have time for setbacks. Let's be real.
Getting the flu shot
Helps you fight the flu.
Get a flu shot for yourself and those around you too.
Every day,
millions of people are connecting
and even though we're overcoming obstacles,
Watching each other's backs.
and banding together.
we should still make an effort
We should still make an effort.
to get to know each other.
On a deeper level.
Father,
Cosplayer,
Mentor.
actor.
it's time we take a step forward
It's time we take a step forward
Come together.
and discover
how accepting our differences
can make us stronger.
Welcome back to another segment of A-State Sports Take. This one's going to be a little bit more lighthearted, as our topic that was voted on by the class is going to be, what is the most obscure, strange, weird sport that you've ever heard of? We're going to start out with Jaira.
The most weird sports I've heard is extreme ironing. And extreme ironing is the latest dangerous sport we have that combines in the thrills of extreme outdoor activity with the satisfaction of a well-pressed shirt. It's currently originated in England, and it's now a worldwide phenomenon that has taken place underwater or mountainsides.
Extreme ironing, and it said underwater? Yes. How are you going to iron? I'm sorry, but my question is, how are you going to iron a shirt underwater? It says the satisfaction of a well-pressed shirt. How you going to iron a shirt underwater? That's the only thing I have about that. That is pretty obscure if you ask me. I just want to know how that would work.
I mean, I've seen people that, did skydiving while ironing. I don't know how they did it, but, they got in a circle and they just start ironing. So, I mean.
That sounds like an insurance disaster.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, wow.
One of the ones that I found was ultimate slapping competitions. It started with a YouTube streamer. His name was Critical, and it started to get really popular in Russia. So they ended up having festivals, and this slapping competition became really big for them. There's a little table. It's about a couple feet wide. There's a handle on each side for two people. One person has to stand with two hands on it, and the other one puts their hand next to their face and literally slaps them as hard as they can. Some people go to the hospital very many times over this, but they do get paid a lot of money to do this overseas.
But then we used to do that in school when we was younger.
I mean, we did that in school. But
Do they slap it with powder or just bare hand?
Sometimes it's powder, sometimes it's bare hand. It depends on the person, but they literally just put as much force as they can and literally slap someone with the most disrespectful force that they have possible.
So what's like the rules? Like, do they have it like this, or they could reach off the table and smack them? Or they got to start right here?
They have to start with the hand to the opponent's face, and then they can reach back as far as they want to.
Ooh, let me stay for
That's hard.
Apologies.
So I think for mine, the obscure one has to be toe wrestling. So, and yes, I said toe, like with your big toes. So it started in England in 1974, and it's basically, they said it's like a childhood game. So you and somebody else, y'all sit on the ground, y'all take your shoes off, and you just put your toes together and just wrestle, and just see which one, who wins. And yeah, it's supposed to be like a combat type of sport. So only equipment that you need is your foot.
I feel like this is a health issue sport at this point. We sharing fungi with each other at that point. That's a health problem sport. That ain't got nothing to do with the competition. That's health issues right there.
I mean, you're just trying to see who's going to become like the Terminator,
Terminator. I like that.
You get it? Yeah.
I'm going to have to cut you off just for that pun.
So mine is the bug snorkeling. It started in Wales in 1976, and it's kind of like its sports event is a 120-year swim competition in the trench cut through a pit dog, and the competitors can only use flippers to power them, and the world record is 1 minute and 18 seconds. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, so it's basically like you're in a little swampy pond area, and it's just straight, and you just got to swim. You can only use like your
flippers.
Your little flippers.
Can you use your arms?
No, you got to use your flippers.
Just flippers.
So you got to be Nemo in the swamp water, basically.
I'll be drowning.
Nope, you won't catch me in there. Out of all 4 of our topics, I'm gonna have to say that yours is the most obscure, because that's just completely odd. It's really odd.
But I mean, people actually do this. Like, it's a competition every year. They go for the championships. I don't really know what they win, but you know, I guess being being titled, you know, the champion or Tominator is going to be the one that's going to, you know, get.
It originated in the 70s, so I mean.
But it's
if people
also,
are doing it, then I mean, by all means, they can have all the fun with it. I won't be participating, I'll tell you that.
But it also started in England, so no offense to, you know, England, but you know, some of the sports that are you considered obscure starts over there. But I will say, like, honorable mention, I would say cheese rolling. So
Cheese rolling.
it's basically, they get a big wheel of cheese. I don't know if it has to be aged or freshly new, and they just roll it down the hill. And I guess the faster one wins. Who can cut it, get it, cut the cheese. Okay.
You with these puns, you gotta stop with these puns.
I'm going to have to cut you off for good after that one. We are out of time on this segment of A-State Sports Take. Thank you for tuning in.
Every day,
Millions of people are connecting
and even though we're overcoming obstacles,
watching each other's backs,
and banding together.
we should still make an effort.
We should still make an
to
effort.
get to know each other,
on a deeper level.
Father,
cosplayer,
Mentor.
actor.
it's time we take a step forward
It's time we take a step forward
Come together
and discover
how accepting our differences
can make us stronger.
Welcome back to A-State Sports Take. I'm your host, Gavin Grubbs, and now we are going to talk about a debate that is highly contested, lots of opinions, lots of different answers, and I don't think any of them are wrong. The question we're going with now is, who is the GOAT across all sports? We're going to start with Dave.
Before we've had this discussion, before actually this show, I would have said Michael Jordan, but now I think I'm going to go with Tom Brady. The man's almost 45 years old. He's been to 10 Super Bowls, won 7 of them. I mean, that's greatness in a nutshell, and you can't ignore the fact that dude's going to be 50 and probably still playing quarterback in the NFL. So that's who I'm going to go with.
See, now, the problem I have with your argument is, to be honest, if you're going to be the GOAT, you've got to play a GOAT sport. And to be honest, American football is not a world game. It's called American football for a reason. So that's why I'm going with Cristiano Ronaldo. You can't talk about a GOAT and not have a long career. Agree, Brady has that. But so does Ronaldo. He signed for Man United in 2003. He was 18 and he is still at the top of his game. I feel like that's shown with the transfer to Juventus. He was the most expensive player over 30 with $117 million spent on him. So I'm open to discussion.
I think I agree with you, but I have to disagree because you also have LeBron James, which he was selected in 2003 at the age of 18, and now he is 36, and he's still on the top of his game. He has played over like 30 minutes with the Cleveland Cavaliers, with Miami Heat, and also Los Angeles Lakers. So, and who do you know has a movie out, has his own school, has his own gym, and has, I think, a contract with Nike with over $90 million, and that's just with Nike by itself. So it's a little tough when you say that.
See, I see that, but the thing to remember with Ronaldo is he is the first active athlete, and that's important saying active athlete, because obviously you've got people like Jordan who have made bank since they haven't been playing, but he is the first active athlete to hit $1 billion in earnings. And he recently made a move back to Man United. He came home, and he's still on £480,000 a week. So they're still paying him the big money.
I'm not saying y'all's are wrong, but I went kind of for like an underdog. Saul Canelo Alvarez, for y'all that don't know who that is, he's a boxer. He's the first undisputed champion in super middleweight history. He has 56, 1 draw, and then, 2 draws and 1 loss against Mayweather. My bad. But yeah.
Excuse me. I think when you have this debate about who the GOAT is, I think people focus more on, well, if they don't agree with this GOAT debate, then they're saying he's a bad athlete. I don't think that's it at all. I think LeBron's a great athlete, but I know I picked Tom Brady, but I can't argue against Michael Jordan. I just don't know how you can. LeBron's a great athlete. I'm not saying that. It's just Michael Jordan is way better, I think, in my opinion. But
yeah, but you have to realize from this standpoint, from that time frame when Michael Jordan was playing, basketball wasn't as, it was more physical, I will give you that, but it was that time being like, I feel like LeBron has proven his point. He is not trying to battle with anybody. He's not trying to battle with Kobe Bryant. He wasn't trying to battle with Michael Jordan in any type of aspects, but numbers do speak in all-time scoring. He has passed Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, which is, I don't feel like he thinks like that, but I feel like for this generation, since 03 or however, Kobe was still like the GOAT in my opinion also, but at this time I feel like LeBron is the GOAT, and in every generation you have your different GOATs, especially for basketball, any sport actually.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
And one input I have to step in and say is, if there's a debate that you're the GOAT in your sport, how can you have an argument that you're the GOAT all time across every sport? Tom Brady is the only athlete that any of you have named that is the undisputed best in his sport. Everyone else still has arguments of a few other athletes that could be better in their own sport. Then how are they going to be better than people in other sports?
Well, that's your question. Yeah, I don't think you can really dispute who the best across every sport is, because football, like Louis said a while ago, what we call football in America is not the same as soccer. It's not. And basketball is not the same as boxing. So, yeah, you got to be a great athlete to play all those sports, but you can't really have a true comparison with 4 different sports to determine who the best of one sport is from 4 different and a lot more.
See, I kind of have to disagree there. I think, like you said, there is a debate in soccer. It's Ronaldo versus Messi. It's been that way since probably about 2008. But I think all that shows is the level of competition. If you can still have these 2 players that are in their mid to late 30s now, and they are still the top of their game, I think you're just showing the level of competitiveness that soccer has, that there's now players coming through that are hitting record numbers like Erling Haaland at Dortmund, but he's not anywhere near that discussion, because people still want to pay the money to see Ronaldo, to see Messi. Why else would you invest so much money in players that are at that age?
Yeah, that is true. I just feel like it really just depends. I'm speaking on my person, LeBron, because at the time before he even got drafted, he was in high school, straight out of high school to the league. So you have these type of players where once you already have your name out there, and once you already have that, your brand around, who you are, it's really hard to say you can't be the GOAT anymore or anything like that for soccer, for boxing, for football. So you really everybody has their own lane, and you can't say, I can never say LeBron would have been good at football. You just can't say those type of things because everybody has their own lane, like I said before.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you for watching our first ever episode of A-State Sports Take. Thank you for watching.